My utmost for his highest. July 18th. The Mystery of Believing by Oswald Chambers. Who are you, Lord? Saul asked. Acts 9:5. Saul of Tarsus was transformed in an instant from a strong-willed, intense Pharisee into a humble, devoted slave of the Lord. How was such a change possible? Only by the miracle of the redemption. There is nothing miraculous about the things we can explain. We command what we are able to explain. Consequently, it's natural for us to seek to explain. What Saul experienced on the road to Damascus had no logical explanation, and neither did the choice he made afterward to live in total obedience to Jesus Christ. Obedience isn't natural, nor is disobedience necessarily sinful. There is no moral virtue in obedience unless a higher authority belongs to the one who commands. Sometimes refusing to obey is an act of self-liberation. If one person says to another, "You must" or "you will," it breaks the human spirit and its loyalty to God. A person is a slave for obeying unless behind the obedience lies a recognition of a holy God. Too often, religion loses sight of God and becomes all about obeying rules. Many souls begin to come to God when they stop being religious, because the human heart only has one master, and that isn't religion, but Jesus Christ. When Jesus Christ appears to me, I am in danger if I say I won't. Jesus will never insist on my obedience. But if I refuse to obey, I have begun to sign the death warrant of the Son of God in my soul. When I stand face to face with Jesus Christ and say I won't, I'm backing away from the recreating power of his redemption. If I come to the light, it's a matter of indifference to God's grace, how abominable I am. But if I refuse the light, woe to me. Everyone who does evil hates the light. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light. John 3:20-21. Isn't it amazing to read the story of Saul, the one that we know as Paul, who has written half of the New Testament. So we know the story when Paul, then Saul, was going and persecuting the early Christians, who were then called Nazarenes because they were following the person, that is Jesus, who was a Nazarene. So people who followed Jesus were called Nazarenes back then, before they were identified as Christians. So Saul was killing all those early believers or followers of Jesus Christ, and he was a Pharisee, right? He was a Jew. And while he was on the road to Damascus, he encountered Jesus, and you know the rest of the story. So everyone else who was traveling on the road with him, they did not perceive the call of God just like Paul did. Paul asked the Lord, "Who are you, Lord?" And the rest of it is history. The call of Jesus in Paul's life and how it transformed him. You know, the next 3 days, Paul goes through a transformation journey, and it is so marvelous to see how later God uses him, so mightily for his work. But it is also the mystery how Paul got transformed, but also the mystery how Paul stayed obedient the rest of his life. But if you turn back and look at your own life, your salvation story, think about how you were before Christ. Think about how you are now. What were your mindset before Christ? What you used to think? What were your thoughts? What used to go on in your mind? What was the darkness that was in your life? And now, what are your thoughts? What are your mind occupied with? How you treat people, how you speak, how you treat yourself. So the redemption power of Jesus is the mystery, right? That transforms us. But it is also our obedience that is still a mystery to me. I still struggle when it comes to obedience. And so in my walk, this is a topic that keeps coming back again and again, maybe because I lack obedience in certain areas of my life. But as Oswald is saying, obedience itself, right? It's not about obedience to everything and everyone, but it's obedience to a holy God that matters, right? Because if you hear the story of Daniel, he did not obey the king when he was asked to bow down and worship the king. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not, show obedience to the king or loyalty to the king, but they showed loyalty to God. Because if they had to obey the king, because that's what happened, they were told, you must bow down. But they said, no, we will not, because our obedience is to God, our loyalty is to God. So often when we think about encountering Jesus, I still don't know how anyone can encounter Jesus and still say no to Jesus. That puzzles me. But the Bible teaches us this truth, because it says that Jesus is the light of the world, and John says that the light has come into the world, but the evil men refuse the light. They want darkness. They don't want the light. So even if Jesus is standing in front of you, there are people that can reject Jesus. They'll say, no, thank you. We don't want Jesus, because they don't want the light. But only if we will say yes to Jesus, then everything changes. Everything else works by the power of his redemptive work. He recreates us. He recreates our likings, our desires, our heart, and everything. We are a new creation, first born out of the Spirit. So if you are in the light, be thankful to God, and also let's not be judgmental about the people who haven't yet walked into the light of the Lord. We will try to do what we are called to do and obey God. So if God is calling you today, it's not just about obeying God at the very beginning when you have received the salvation of God, but also the rest of the life that we live in obedience to God. So if God is calling you to go somewhere, go. If He's calling you to do something, do it, because obedience is better than sacrifice. And our God is not a God who will insist you. He will not force you into obeying Him. But if we refuse to obey, the danger is that we will grieve the Spirit of God in us. So I pray that God will help us to never go to that place where we grieve His Spirit in us, but that He will give us the Spirit to obey Him. He will give us the strength and the wisdom to obey Him, not just obey Him, but also to do what He's asking us to do. Obeying means action, right? We can listen to God, we can hear what He says, but if we have to obey, then we need to act it out. So obedience to obey God is to do it. So I pray that this blesses you, and I'll see you on another devotional. God bless you. Maranatha, Yeshua. Amen.